All right, welcome to SIG Windows. This is a recorded session. This is a CNCF project, and so we do follow CNCF code of conduct. If you have any questions about that or concerns, you can reach out to any of the leads here or anybody else involved in the Kubernetes project. So welcome. Today is June 21st, 2022, and we're going to get started with SIG Windows meeting. So Mark is out this week and next. So if you have any questions for him, you can direct them to me or Claudio. And then a couple things I wanted to announce before we get started with the meeting is we have host process containers. That's going to stay in beta for 125. After quite a bit of discussion, we decided that the best thing to do here was to get the changes that are required for the new mount, the new volume mounting behavior into container D 1.7, which isn't scheduled to release until after 125. And so once that's out in 1.7, we'll then have the ability to have a little bit more feedback from customers, and it just makes a smoother upgrade path and those types of things. And so it's going to stay in beta for 125, and then in 126 we'll plan on going to stable. So the enhancements open. I think it just needs an LGTM at this point. So if you want to read it over, ask any questions. Otherwise, end of the day, I'll probably give that LGTM for host process containers. Any questions on that one? Okay, enhancements is freezes this week. It got pushed back to this Thursday from last Thursday. So I know we have a couple enhancements that are going in, and so I will do a check-in a little bit later, but just wanted to get that out to everybody. Is there any other announcements anybody wanted to make? All right. Well, we typically leave a little bit of room for new contributors. If anybody wants to say hello, I see a couple new names, I think.
Hello. I got the wrong camera going, but that's okay. I know James on this call. That's all I know from a co-engineering thing from a while back. I work at Sycor, and I didn't realize this group existed. So I just want to introduce myself, and I'll periodically pop in and see what's new and what things are being worked on.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Cool. Anybody else? All right. So for the agenda, this one I added. I think David's on the call as well. Last week, you may have seen the email go out to Kubernetes dev that the 122 and 123 patch releases got delayed by a day. This was due to a backport that we put in, and we didn't catch it in CI until kind of the last day or so. The patch that we were working on was an improvement to kubeproxy for when there's a lot of services and a new node is coming online. The sync time for that can be significant, in the hundreds of minutes. And so David patched this and has some fixes. When we were backporting it to 123, 122, that still included Docker shim, and so it missed when we ran the the pre-submits. We ran them against container D, but we missed them against Docker shim. In our CI, we caught them in Docker shim, and we ended up reverting those tests, and David is going to reopen those backports early in this cycle for the next release and get them out. We do have a fix for the Docker shim. So David, I don't know if you want to mention anything else there.
No, I think you summarized everything pretty well. I guess the thing to consider is if anyone has been using Div v1 APIs to create an HNS endpoint, they might be impacted. They might have been impacted by this issue, but I don't think we ever made a release with the optimizations in a Docker shim based Kubernetes release, right? Is that right, James? Are there any
Right, yeah,
minor versions where this could have been occurred? I don't think so, because
yeah, we caught it before the release got out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
nobody should be affected by it, but it's a good reminder to upgrade your CNIs to using the latest versions of the HNS API.
Yeah, I did double check. I mean, it seemed like pretty much every CNI was using containerd. They had to move to the v2 flow, and as part of that, you were using the HCN APIs. And I think this issue should only occur on containerd. I did double check Calico, and when overlay also was using the v2 APIs already. So I don't think there should be any impact to anyone.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess the message is if anyone is using v1, if anyone is a CNI provider or uses a CNI plugins, make sure you use the v2 APIs, which you should already be using.
Cool. I think OpenShift was on a different CNI. I see Manny on the, or no, maybe that's not the same person. So I think they just upgraded to the newest versions of the CNIs. So I think we're good there.
And the Antria guys, I think you guys are using the Win users base proxy anyway, right? So that there would be no impact here as well. So yeah, that's all I had. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah, so they did upgrade to v2. Cool. All right. Any other questions on that? Okay. Great. So I don't know if we have everybody that we need for the check-in, but I just wanted to add this since the enhancements coming up at the end of the week here. If anybody had anything or any updates on the enhancements, I think PodOS, I think Ravi made the changes and it's tracked for this cycle. So yeah, I think this one is. So it looks like we are probably going to be going to stable for PodOS, which is pretty exciting. And then kubectl logs. Not sure if we have anybody on the call that has any updates on this. I think we were trying to get to alpha again this round. Oops, wrong. Did I copy the wrong link here? Yeah, so Avrant is not around right now, so I think looks like he has an open PR. We probably should follow up on this. I don't know if anybody on the call has any updates on this.
Seems to be approved.
Yeah, sweet. Cool. So I think we can. It's another one that I'll probably release at the end of the day, unless anybody has any updates. Okay. Is there anything else anybody wanted to discuss today? Kind of a quiet meeting.
Hi, may I give a short update about the Kubernetes Windows test?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have read lots of the tests currently upstream in the Linux conformance test, and I found that most of the tests don't have the node selector. So even if the tests that cover the lots of aspect of the networking part, but it's still like hard to reuse that for Windows because we need to add a node selector in each of the case when they create a pod or create their resources. So I'm thinking that maybe it's even easier to add the new test directly to the Windows folder. So I started to do that, and I have like a draft PR in the in the Windows E2E test, and I haven't finished that. So what I added is a cluster IP service test to the service.go file, and I also create another file to test the stateful set, which is part of the networking test in the cap that Jay previously merged into the repo. So that is what I'm doing, and also after the networking part, I will go ahead to the storage and network policy and other part. So if anyone that are interested in contributing to the Windows E2E test, please let me know, and probably we can work together. So this is about the Kubernetes test, and also a quick update about refactoring the GMSA and that is the other PR that I opened a few weeks ago. So I tested in the actually that. So are you looking for the E2E test PR? It's a draft one, probably it's not here. I can send you the link later.
I was just looking for the enhancement. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay. And for the other one that I have is the GMS APR, and I already checked the DNS and the connectivity between the pod and the node and between the node and the Active Directory. Actually, we find out it's the resources are accessible using the IP, but not the domain name. But actually the test itself looks good to me. So I'm thinking that maybe there's something wrong in my environment. So if that is the case, I'm wondering that if you have the time to test it in the Azure environment. So if it can pass the Azure environment, that means that the test itself is correct, and we can still go ahead and merge the PR. So I don't know if that sounds good to you, but we can like work on this if you like have to know
that. It's on my list to do to get that to test that PR against the Azure environment. I'll probably get to it this week. I did when I was doing the GMSA previously. I was able to get it to work with the DNS name. I think if I remember correctly, you have to use the fully qualified like DNS name. So I don't know if you're using that or not, but and then you need to have like the DNS on the node set up and then the DNS in the pod set up. There's just quite a like moving parts there, so could be any little thing going wrong.
Yeah, right. I have the DNS on the node and pod set up, and for the full domain name, I actually think I'm using the full domain name, so I can't really see what probably wrong in my environment, probably something else when I start in a node or the registry key or whatever other things. Yeah. So there may be other reasons, or there may be I don't know if there's like a bug or other things in this part.
Cool. Yeah, that's the other issue, is that you need to have like the registry key set properly. And I think you said you had that set, so. Yeah, that's on my list to do this week. So hopefully be able to get back to you at the end of that. So
Okay, thank you very much for that.
for the networking tests, I think typically we recommend putting taints on the control plane nodes and the Linux nodes in the tests so that all the pods get scheduled on the Windows tests. Did you try that, or are you planning on is it a different type of test that you're initializing or starting?
So actually, yeah, no matter to add taint or the add node selector, I'm thinking about if I should modify the existing Linux test or adding a new Windows test. So now I'm thinking maybe it's easier to add new Windows test, and that is what I'm doing right now. So do you mean that you want me to modify the existing Linux test and make it work for Windows?
I guess I don't know, maybe Claudio can jump in here, but I thought we typically taint the Linux nodes so that all the tests automatically run on Windows and then they work. I think that's how we're doing it in most of the upstream tests that or the runs we do on Azure.
Yeah, that's how we typically do our tests. There's only one exception. For example, we do have an E2E test for Windows for hybrid network, which basically spawn both the Linux container and the Windows container. Of course, for the Linux container, we also add a tolerance for that taint that we previously mentioned. I think ideally we wouldn't copy or duplicate other tests, because that would basically mean that we would have to maintain them as well. If there's only one test and it actually gets updated in time, it will also be updated for Windows as well without having to have any worries about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's the main approach we had with testing as well. Whenever there was any Linux only tests and we were considering enabling for Windows, we would rather have the same test with some changes to make it work for Windows. I think that's a reasonable approach.
But if we have the taint for the but if we add a 10, which means that we allow the pod to be scheduled on this node, but it doesn't really guarantee that this node will be on the Windows node, right? If there are other Linux nodes.
Can you repeat, please? I didn't quite get it.
So if we add the taint to the to the pod or the node, which means that we allow this pod to be scheduled on the Windows node. But when we run
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. You can actually have another node selector on the pod, which basically specifies, hey, I want this pod to spawn on a Linux node. And if you also add a tolerance for that, that will guarantee you that you'll have a Linux pod on Linux, basically.
Yeah, right.
Fully scheduled.
That is exactly what I'm thinking. So, so for example, if I want to test, let me see. If I want to test a service that should have the endpoint on the Windows pod, on the Windows node, if I only have the taint, I can't guarantee that. I need to have the node selector so I can guarantee that the pod is scheduled on the Windows node.
Yeah,
So that means that I have to modify the Linux, the existing Linux test to add this node selector. But I'm not sure if it's a good idea to change the existing performance test.
Did you say you had a PR, like a draft PR?
I don't think it's a good idea to change the existing Linux test, so I don't have PR to change that, but I have another PR to directly add new test case to the Windows E2E. Windows E2E test. Let me find that first.
Cool. Maybe you can link that here and we can discuss a little further by looking at that PR.
Yeah, actually, it's the draft PR right now. I haven't finished the stateful step test. I only added one test for the. I sent it to the chat. I only add one for the cluster IP.
And also, by the way, here's the example I mentioned, in which with a test in which we basically spawn a Linux pod and a Windows pod in the same test, and how we're handling the node selector and the tolerance for the node taint. At the bottom is there's a function called create test pod, which handles that part.
Yeah, I reused some functions in my PR to do the test, but but my main point here is that I don't think it's a good idea to modify the existing Linux test, so I add new test cases to the Windows E2E folder directly.
Yeah, that works. If you'd have to make a huge amount of changes to make a Linux test to pass on Windows, I think in that case it makes more sense to just have it in the Windows folder, just have it for us.
Yeah, maybe.
Mhm.
We can
Cool.
like think about the detail of this PR offline.
Sounds good. Thank you for the update. Awesome to see some progress.
Yeah, especially since you also have the skip unless Node OS distro is Windows. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to be in the Windows folder then. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's think offline about this detail.
Cool. Any other questions there? Otherwise, I think we have a KPNG update from Jay.
Yeah, well, this is really on behalf of Dimitri. So huge thanks to Dimitri. He's taken over the original KPNG kernel space PR, and I just pinged him this weekend, and I heard that he now has got it writing out load balancers and endpoints and so on and so forth. So pretty happy to hear that. I'm going to steal his fork and do some kind of a thing where we can get the code all together, and so I can start sort of testing against it. And so it's probably late for him, so he's not here today, but I'm just updating on his behalf. So big thanks to Dimitri and the folks at Microsoft for helping on that front.
Cool. For anybody not familiar with what KPNG is, it's Kuproxy next gen, and trying to bring Kuproxy out of tree and make some much needed improvements, I guess. Jay might be able to explain a little bit more. But.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We're moving the KPNG out of tree, and so from a Windows perspective, it's not that. From a Windows perspective, it'll give us the ability to run the kubeproxy in a manner where the thing that talks to the API server is separate from the Windows process that writes the rules. So it'll give us a much lighter way of doing proxying, and also it will give us the ability to add whatever configuration options we want to the Windows proxy without having to be coupled or rely on the overall life cycle of the Linux kubeproxy. Folks have seen issues in the past where, for example, we wanted to add a priority to the Windows kubeproxy backend, and then it turned into a long debate about how that would, be one global parameter. But there's other ones, right? Yeah. Cool. That's all I got. And again, sorry for being late. I have this critical meeting that happens at the exact same time as this meeting. But I'm always happy to stay afterwards if folks want to talk about things.
Cool. Guess we have 2 minutes left. Does anybody have anything else they want to bring up?
Claudio, you got any jokes for us or anything?
Not this time. I mean, I think it might be worth mentioning that Kubernetes 121 is approaching end of life next week. So we'll probably have to do some cleanup in the test jobs for that.
Sounds good.
I'm wondering, since it's my first time here, obviously I joined because I was following an issue that we have, and then ended up on Slack, and then found out about this through James. How do these issues get triaged, and how does it get assigned to someone on GitHub? Just, I don't want to circumvent anything. I'm just curious if it's an issue reported, maybe some steps to reproduce, like what happens at that point for issues to get looked at. And I'm being no sarcasm here. I really am wanting to follow the process here.
Yeah, so we triage the issues. We do that bi-weekly, and then people do it periodically throughout the week.
Okay.
And once we determine that it is an actual issue, we try to get somebody assigned to it to fix it. The clearer we have for steps, the easier it is to like reproduce. The faster this process goes. But it's mostly a volunteer project thing.
Okay.
It's a matter of kind of, someone has the bandwidth to pick one up and fix it. If it's a critical bug and you happen to have somebody that is really passionate about it, we encourage them to give it a try and try to reproduce it, try to fix it. We're here to help for that in SIG Windows as well. You can always ask questions on doing dev and things like that.
Well, we got the first two. We got the passion and the willing to reproduce, but we certainly don't have the knowledge after that to dig in deeper into the networking. The inner networking of pods on Kubernetes is just not our thing. We're at the app level. But yeah,
is this a cloud thing or a on-prem thing?
It's a cloud thing?
Or a CNI thing. Okay.
So the issue itself looks like kubeproxy is writing the load balancer policies, but then on an update, if they refresh the pod multiple times, it somehow drops that policy. So I think we got to that reproduction just yesterday, I think. And so
and then Alexander just added a workaround. If we flip the services to load balancer and then back to cluster IP, then everything kind of magically fixes itself. The issue is we have 5 or up to on another demo 8 or 9 services that spin up at the same time. Some are Windows, some are Linux, and the Windows nodes or the Windows pods, pardon me, lose connectivity or cannot connect to the Linux pods or the Linux services. So just by flipping those 2 Linux services from one to the other, it's somehow, what James was saying, it must rewrite something because it seems to work around our issue.
Sounds like a missing E2E test for sure. I mean, we definitely have a horizontal pod connectivity thing that spins up. Are we missing something where we need to create a test that creates different type of services for that cross horizontal testing?
I think it seems to be like something to do with like the speed at which the service triggers the rewrites. Now that we have the reproduction, I was going to give it a try at some point, but
cool. Do we expect this to happen off of cloud environments, or I guess not because it's only external IPs?
I don't know. Are these internal IP addresses?
I believe they are internal to the cluster. I'm not sure how our Helm charts are set up. I think we use the service names to reach everything. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not.
That's okay.
I'm not at your level with regards to I now lead the team, not do a lot of this back end stuff.
Do you want to show it to us sometime this week? I mean, I'd be happy to look at it with you.
Sure.
Just
You guys are Pacific, right?
I'm Eastern.
Oh, you're Eastern. Perfect. Okay. Because we
Is it a-
have,
yeah.
so I'll give a 30-second what we do. And James knows, he was part of helping us get here. We host dozens and dozens and actually hundreds of AKS instances or deployments, which are the demos that our sales engineers use. And for the past multiple months, it's a daily, multiple times a day. And of course, we're global, so I'm Eastern. By the time Europe starts spinning up instances, I'll wake up and I have 3 o'clock in the morning notifications that, you know, and they're custom notifications, but every 5 minutes we get a nag in Teams saying the demo's not working. So we go in and we just literally go and kill our Linux pod, just kill it, and it comes back up and everything magically appears. And that's been our life for the past 4 to 6 months. And it would be awesome. Like, Alexander's working on this workaround and doing like a job to monitor. And when the thing doesn't work, he'll just kill the pod automatically and have it snap. But we'd like to help. So our contribution will be the steps to reproduce in the environment in which it happens fairly consistently. And if one of them happens and it's not a critical instance that needs to spin up, I can reach out to the end user and say, leave that one there, spin up a new one, and we'll get nagged for a while, but I'll reach out to you guys. And
I think the hardest thing about this that we always run into is this an AKS issue? Is this a GKE issue? Is this, a kube proxy issue?
Right.
And like, because if it was just a kube proxy issue, it would be really, really easy to get somebody to work on this because we have a developer environment. It's called SIG Windows DevTools. You can clone it down and it'll spin up a Vagrant instance with a Windows node and a Linux node. And then we could build an E2E test to test this. Me, Chinchy, and Meme, other folks could like hack around on that. But then it's like, is this an Azure issue? And so the most interesting thing for me is this a cloud specific issue? And, so maybe the best thing to do is maybe you could show us. I don't know if you're free. Like, do you have an engineer that's free in like 3 hours or?
3 hours. Yeah. The problem is we can spin up 3 and it'll be fine, and the 4th one won't be. So it's almost one of those things where.
I mean, you don't have to prove it to me. I just want to see what you're doing, and I'll assume that everything you're saying is correct. But I just want to see the environment.
Oh, sure. Like the Helm charts and the way it's deployed and everything. Okay. Okay, sure. Let me. I'll just check. I'll let you close.
You're in Slack, right? You're in the Kubernetes Slack?
I am on Q. Yeah.
I'll ping you in there.
Sounds good.
Ping you in there. Okay.
I think it's. I don't remember what I think it's JFL.
I'll start a thread in there. June.
Sounds good.
You have an easy to find name.
And so the issue was initially created in AKS, but at this point, I believe it's actually a kube proxy issue, Jay. That's what I was trying to do, is triage it down. And we've gotten to the point where I think we're close to being able to reproduce it in any environment. So.
Okay, cool. Oh my God, there's so many Jean-Francois in the upstream Kubernetes community. I'm sure there's like 10 of you.
The good old French names,
Cool.
That's hilarious. But I'm in on JF, so you won't find me as Jean-Francois.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna ping you all in Slack.
Awesome.
Cool. I think we're a few minutes late.
Yeah, that's my fault.
So no, it's okay. That's what this is for. I'm glad we're getting you connected. So I guess I'll end it. And thanks for coming, everybody.
Cool. If anybody wants to do any after hours, I'm happy to hang out for a few minutes. Otherwise, I'll drop as well.
I have to find they hide the recording button.